If you are trying to lose fat and build muscle and you feel like you're doing all the right things, but nothing is changing, your body composition is not changing, you're not losing any fat, your lifts aren't getting any better, you're not lifting any more weight, it's because you're focusing on what's optimal, what should happen in a perfect world, and not what's effective for you. And this is exactly why I created the Lifter's Blueprint, because there's no shortage of information in 2025. If you have a question, you can get it answered by Google. You can ask Siri. You can ask ChatGPT. You can even use Instagram search bar. You can ask a Facebook group, and you will get an answer. But you're likely getting answers that are just based on what's optimal, right? What should happen in a perfect world, what is based on research. And that's all cool, but we have to know how to take that information and actually apply it to your situation, your life, and what's happening in your world, not in a perfect world, because at the end of the day, perfection does not exist. So, in this video, we're going to talk about how to take what's optimal and move it to what's optimal for you. If you want all of my training insights, all of the questions that you're likely asking in Facebook groups and Google, on Chat GPT, and getting conflicting answers and you're not sure exactly how to apply it, grab it below. It'll be in the description if you're watching on YouTube, and it'll also be in the comments if you're watching on Facebook. But with that being said, let's get into the video. So, most people who are in this position, they're usually very consistent. They're obsessing over the best way to do something. They're training regularly. They are paying attention to their food. They're trying to apply all the information they're learning. But the problem is they're trying to follow rigid rules that sound good on paper, that sound good in research, right? They are looking for optimal protein targets, the best time to time their meals, the best workout split, the best form of cardio, the best time to do cardio versus lifting, if they should do cardio and lifting on the same time on the same day. And individually, none of those things are wrong. They're all good things to pay attention to. But the problem with focusing on what's optimal is that it assumes a perfect setup, a perfect situation. It assumes that you are doing everything 100% right. You're getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep. You don't have any physical or emotional stress that shouldn't be in your life, right? You are expected to have unlimited time. You're expected to not have any aches or injuries. You are expected to be recovering at 100%. That's not real life, especially when you think about having a family, having different responsibilities, having specific work schedules where you can't eat before a training session, or even being a human, being different. Like, not everybody wants to do workouts fasted, or not everybody wants to even eat um before a workout, right? There's some people who do a little bit better with eating before a workout. They have time to have a slow morning, have a breakfast, let that digest, and then go hit their session. Then you have people who work out at 5 a.m. They don't have time to eat a whole meal and then go train. So we have to take into consideration all of these different factors and nuances that actually go into being able to execute the right way. So yes, it's great to have data and research that shows you the best way to do something, but at the end of the day, the best program is the one that you can execute consistently, right? So if you can't do things to perfection all the time, it's in your best interest to make it work for you in a way that is still abiding by certain principles, because the principles don't change, but apply those principles to your situation, which is what is the gap in the fitness industry today, because everybody is spitting out information that come from these textbooks and recent research papers, but nobody's telling you how to apply it to yourself, to apply it to your life, right? So that's what we are going to talk about briefly here, and that is literally what the Lifter's Blueprint is. If you want that, grab it in the comments. So let's talk about how this obsession over optimal shows up. A big one is protein intake. So we all know that protein is important. There's tons of research on it. Even if you have no interest in building muscle, protein is essential for general health. It literally is what your body needs on a cellular level. But online, you see people arguing over whether you should eat 1 gram of protein per current body weight or 1 gram of protein for your ideal body weight, the body weight that you want to be. And the truth is, when you really look into protein, there are wide ranges of where people are going to be most successful at when it comes to certain goals, when it comes to endurance goals. So if you are somebody who is looking to run a marathon, do a triathlon, there's certain protein recommendations for that. If you are a more like strength athlete, there's going to be protein recommendations for that. If you're in general population, you just want to get healthy, you want to improve different health metrics, maybe you want to look a little better, you want your clothes to fit better, but you're not an athlete, there's recommendations for you as well. So it's not just, oh, 1 gram per body weight or 1 gram per ideal body weight. None of that matters. It's more so a range. But you do want to get as close as possible to the recommended range. So if you're somebody who is, let's say, 200 pounds, right? You may not need to ever eat 200 grams of protein, even though the recommendation is 1 gram per body weight, right? You will likely do better eating 160 grams, 170 grams. Like those are realistic targets. So I share that to say, just because the recommendation says 1 gram per body weight, it does not mean that you need to do that, because when you look at everything else, you still have to account for carbs, you have to account for fats, you have to account for total calorie intake, you have to account for your digestive system and whether you are even tolerating that amount of protein anyways. And then when you look at the amount of protein that people are actually getting, at least in America, and as women, we're under eating protein for the most part. So if you take somebody who's eating like 90 grams of protein and you have them double that to 180, they're likely not going to respond well to that. So we have to look at the context of what we're applying things in, and then go from there. So I think that's really the beauty of like coaching, because you have these things that are circulating online in terms of what we should be doing, but we're not considering what the person is currently doing now. So this is why I think people find it hard to do things consistently, because it could be overwhelming when you're so far off from what's optimal. You have to start somewhere. So I say all that to say, if you're somebody who is looking to get more protein, you know you're under eating, or you know you're not getting enough protein for what you say your goal is, you have to first take account of where you actually are. Because if you're already eating 150 grams of protein and you think you should be eating 170, that's a lot different than a person who's eating 100 grams of protein and they need to increase it by 70 grams, right? So we have to look at where we're at so we don't run into the situation where we're feeling like this is something that we can't do. And that's a lot of what we see online. We are seeing people who have what research would call an optimal life. Like they have time to spend 5 hours in the gym. They can hit their step count. They can do 150 minutes of cardio throughout the week. They can hit all muscle groups twice a week. They can lift weights 6 days a week. All those things are great, but we have to be real with where we are. And that's something that's lacking in the fitness industry and in social media. Another example is meal timing and training timing. So you have people that are asking questions about when's the best time to eat protein after a training session, or when's the best time to eat carbs, or how many carbs should you eat before training. And that's helpful to know, especially when you're working with like higher level athletes. If you have somebody who's training for a marathon, there's different carbs that you need to be eating. There's different timing of that, especially leading up to that event. But for most people, that's not their reality. We're not going into um, a long running session. Yes, you may be hitting legs hard, but you're not going to get to the point where you need to be timing specifically carb intake, right? If you have enough carbs throughout the day leading up to that, you're fine. So if we focus on the basics, that's all that matters. So it's not going to make or break your results if you don't eat before your workout. You really just have to see if it works for you. Some people cannot do a leg day early in the morning without eating. Some people get lightheaded, but that's a thing. I personally hate training legs in general, and I hate working out in the morning. So I'm likely not doing legs before 8 a.m. I'm just not happening. And I also don't like to eat before my workout unless it's something light. So I know that I need energy before I lift, but I'm also not going to eat before a certain time in the morning. So I just structure my training on what works best for me. I'm still abiding by the general nutritional rules that we should be getting throughout our day. I'm not under eating. I'm not missing out on protein. I'm not going over my fat intake consistently. There's still rules that I abide by. I just kind of bend the rules to fit my life. And that's what is missing. People don't know how to mold those rules based on these principles. Another thing, I just thought of this. Somebody asked earlier about cardio. So how long they should be doing cardio and if they should do it before or after lifting. And if you were to look this up online, this is the answer you're going to get. There are specific aerobic exercise or cardio exercise guidelines that are put out there by different governing bodies in the country. Like America has one, Australia has one, and basically they're pretty much the same. You should get, this is a recommended amount, you should get 150 minutes per week of cardiovascular exercise. And if it's 150 minutes a week, it should be moderate intensity or 75 minutes of high intensity cardiovascular exercise. So if I was to tell that person that answer, how does that help them? They're like, how am I fitting that in? So when it comes to fitting in cardio, and then also she asked if she should do cardio before or after lifting. The answer to that, if you look that up, is going to say based on your goal, you should prioritize one over the other first. So if your goal is to get stronger or build muscle, you should do weightlifting first. If your goal is to improve your endurance, your aerobic endurance, or your cardiovascular system, then you should do cardio first. What if you want to do both? What if you're somebody who wants to have better cardiovascular endurance, but you also want to be stronger? How do you structure that? Right? So I share all that to say we have the information out there that's going to tell you the right way to do something, but then you have to take that and apply it to your life. So what that person should be asking is not how much cardio they should be doing or when they should be doing cardio. Is more so what works for you, right? And then being smart about that. So if you know that after you finish your lift session, you are not going to do cardio and you know it's important for you to do cardio that day, then you should do it before your lift. There's nothing wrong with that because cardio is such a vast thing. It's not just activity that makes you get out of breath. Like people hear cardio and they think they have to do like burpees and sprints and things that leave them panting and seeing stars. That's not what cardio is. That's a form of cardio, but that's not the entire aspect of cardio. There's different parts of your cardiovascular system you can train. So with that being said, if you know that you are going to do a heavy strength training session, so say you are going to do a heavy leg session, it would not be smart for you to go and do sprints and burpees and a lot of jumping before your leg session because you're going to be fatigued going into your leg session. That just doesn't make sense, right? But you can do an incline walk. You can do the stationary bike. You can do the assault bike because it's not going to take up too much of your energy for your lifts. If you're doing upper body, which I do this often, especially in the summer when I'm running more, I'll run before I hit my upper body. Like, yes, my legs may be tired, but my upper body muscles aren't really going to be tired from running. So I know myself. Once I do my lift, I'm out the gym. I'm not staying at the gym. So I'll do my upper body session after my run. It works out perfectly. But if you look at the science, it says, oh, don't do that because it's not optimal. We're not trying to be optimal. We're trying to be effective for what works for you. Because if I had to do cardio after my lift, I'm probably not going to do it. And it's more important for me to do cardio than to skip it. So these are the things that we have to think about. And for somebody else, they may want to do cardio after their lift, which is totally fine. No answer is inherently wrong. No way to do it is inherently wrong. It's just wrong when it interferes with the other things you have to get done in your training or other things that are also important in your training. But nobody's telling you this context. And that's why people don't do things because they feel like they have to be perfect, when in reality, consistency is going to beat theoretical perfection all the time, right? Next thing that also comes up is training splits. So there's tons of different training splits out there, and you'll see people saying, oh, you need to work out 4 or 5 times a week. What if you can't? What if you can only commit to 2 or 3 days a week? Should you not work out? No, right? That doesn't make sense. And then you have people who are doing, let's say, a 3-day a week program, and they hear somebody saying, oh, you should do 5 days a week. What if they can't do that? And now they're trying to increase their weekly sessions to fit in 5, and they can't be consistent with that. So now they are discouraged because they're not consistent when they were just doing fine doing 3. So I think in actuality, there's no universal best split. It's more so having a split that takes into account your situation and also applies all of the things that should be in a good training program, regardless of how many days a week you work out. Because there's certain principles that apply across the board, whether you're working out 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, right? And if we know those principles, then we don't have to worry about what's the best amount of days. Because honestly, just because somebody works out 5 days a week does not mean their training program is good, and does not mean their results is going to be better than somebody who is training 3 days a week, because there's principles that need to be in place. I've seen some pretty shitty 5-day a week program, and I've seen some really good 3 days a week programs. So it really just depends on if you have those principles in your program. Principles like training, exercise selection, training frequency in terms of how often you're training different movements. Does that align with your goal? If your goal is to power lift, there are certain things that need to be in your program that don't need to be in your program if you're not trying to power lift. So this is why just finding exercises or workouts online and putting them together isn't really the best way to go about things, because just because it's a good workout online does not mean it's going to be a good workout for what you want to do. Another example when it comes to training splits is push-pull legs. And I'm talking about the 3-day version. So you can do push-pull legs 3 days a week, or you can do push-pull legs 6 days a week. I'm talking about the 3-day a week version. And this is my take on it. This is my, in my experience, this is what I've seen. I think it is a horrible program for anybody who is not a beginner and people who want to build muscle. And here's why. When you do a push-pull legs split for 3 days a week, you're hitting your push muscles one time, you're hitting your pull muscles one time, and you are hitting legs one time throughout the week, which is good if you're a beginner. But for somebody who is not a beginner and wants to build muscle, you are going to need to account for the things that actually contribute to muscle growth, which are frequency. So you should be training all your muscle groups at least twice a week, or at least the muscle groups that you want to build and grow twice a week. Push-pull legs 3 days doesn't allow that. That already has made it insufficient. Then building on frequency, when it comes to muscle growth, you also need to account for volume. So how many working sets, so sets hard and close to failure, are you getting throughout the week? So there's a big range. So anywhere from 10 to 30 sets per muscle group that you want to grow is what you should be doing. 10 is for beginners. And then as you gain more training experience and your body gets used to lifting, you're going to need more stimulus, more volume to keep building muscle. So you start adding more volume. So as somebody who is more in like the intermediate level, you're going to need a little bit more volume throughout the week. And think about fitting. Say you want to grow your legs. Think about fitting 10 sets for each leg muscle group into one leg session throughout the week. It's not going to happen. And yes, you can do it, but what you're going to notice is as you're accumulating more sets, you're also accumulating fatigue and you're not able to perform on those sets the way you would if you spread them out across the week. But if you're doing a push-pull leg split, you're only hitting that group one time a week. So you only have one session to get all those sets in. So you end up getting diminishing returns. This is why it's best if you are doing 3 full body days or 1 upper body day, 1 lower body day, and 1 full body day, because you're able to account for frequency and volume and intensity all across the week, as opposed to with the push-pull legs, you can't. So if you were to look up online the best training split, you're likely going to see push-pull legs. You might see 2 upper body, 2 lower body. But the reality is it's not about the name of the split. It's more so about if you're taking into account the training variables like frequency, volume, intensity, and applying that to what you want to do. So the split really isn't as important as what you're actually doing inside that split. And that's the context that people don't look at. They're just like, oh, this is a split, let me do it. And they end up either running themselves into the ground because they're doing a 5-day split when they know damn well they're going to do 3 days, and they end up doing half the program, or they are doing a split that just doesn't make sense for what their goal is, which the push-pull legs is a common split that I see a lot of ladies do when they say that they want to get stronger, they want to build muscle, and they're not training in alignment with that because the push-pull legs is not meant for that. The 3 days is not meant for that. Oh, also, the last thing, I just thought of another example. So cardio and lifting, when people are considering doing cardio and lifting, they always say, oh, if I do cardio, is it going to kill my gains? Most people are not training hard enough or even often enough for cardio to even interfere with any type of gains. If you think about your best athlete, think of your favorite sport and the best athlete in that sport. They are training multiple body systems all in one day strategically because our body is capable of that. So if you're only working out 3 or 4 days a week and you think adding a little bit of cardio is going to kill your gains, then you have to, like, it just doesn't make sense. So I say all that to say, instead of thinking in absolutes, thinking you need to do one versus the other, it really just comes down to having your program and week set up in a way that you're able to actually get both of them in, because there's so much research out there now, especially with like hybrid athletes, that it's 1,000% doable to do cardio and lifting. It's more so how do you integrate that to fit in a way that you can actually be consistent with. And that's the detail that people aren't necessarily thinking about. They're more so reading things like, oh, don't do cardio because it's going to kill your gains, or if you're a runner, don't do lifting because you're going to get too heavy and be slow. Those are not true at all. It just comes down to really, really good programming. And this is why coaching is so invaluable. There is no single optimal program. There is no best program that can be made without thinking about the person that's going to be doing it. Because a program can look really good on paper, but if that person cannot consistently execute it, it doesn't matter. A program is only as good as its execution. So this is why when we live in a world where there's so much information out there, like there's no shortage of information, you can still struggle to hit your goals because people are not thinking about how to make it fit them. They know the science, but they don't know how to apply it. Like all the information is there, but Knowing is different than executing. Knowing is different than implementing. And that's why I created the Lifter's Blueprint, so that you can know it, but you can also apply it. Because if you open your phone and search anything, you can know it. But that does not mean you're going to do it. That does not mean you know how to do it in a way that works for you. So if you want to actually take your training to the next level in a way that works for you, not something that's made for the masses, then comment Blueprint. If you're on Facebook, comment Blueprint, and I'll send you the link. It'll also be in the description on YouTube. And if you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. But with that being said, popping off. Peace.